Yours truly. Y'all know who it is. It's your boy, Mr. Uncut. Y'all know the mission of Uncut Line Productions is where we focus on mind, body, soul, spirit, faith, social issues, politics, you name it. As I always say, we keep it 100 or 1,000. That's right. We will not be paused, edited, or muted. Whatever you see, hear, hey, the cards lay how they lay. And it just doesn't get no realer than that. Eyes on the community. Gorgeous Prince George's. Special elections. District 8. For those who have been chiming in, and y'all have seen the various guests that have been on the show, we've had the beloved Miss Tanya Sweat. We've had the beloved Mr. Stanford Frazier. We've had the beloved David Grogan. Man, we've had so many people on this set. I'm telling y'all never know who's going to be here on the set. We coming with the winners. We bringing the bangers. We bringing the professionals. We bringing the big shots. Telling you better tune in to what Uncut Live Production is doing. One moment, you're going to blink and you're going to be like, man, I remember when Uncut was doing this and that. Without any further ado, because sometimes I always get the guests that I bring on the set, I get their bios messed up. I don't always remember everything right, so I tell them, hold it in my head, not my heart. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the guest, the one and only Miss Ebony Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenneth, for having me tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ebony Sinella Johnson, and I am running as an independent write-in candidate in the February 1st special election for County Council for District 8. A little bit about me. I am born and raised in Woodbridge, Virginia. I moved to the county in 2007. I lived for about 6 years in Landover in the Palmer Park area, a neighborhood called Windmill Square. And while I lived there, I saw a need for things to change, much like what you do here on your show every episode. And so I ran for the condo board. That neighborhood has about 405 condo units there, and was elected to the board and revamped everything, fired the management company, rebuilt the board so that it was people who wanted to make a difference, wanted to do things better for the community. And in a matter of a few years, we were able to turn that neighborhood around in terms of their financial standing. They were in a place where there was $0 in the accounts each month, even though there's 405 homes paying about $200 a month, and there's no money left at the end of the month for anything, not even for the lights or the water. And in a matter of years, we were able to amass millions in reserves of the community's own money and reinvest it in the community in terms of rebuilding houses with new roofs, paint, dormers, you name it. So that was a great experience. I lived there for 6 years and moved down to District 8, Fort Washington in 2013. And it's a very similar thing. Since I've been here, I've seen things that I want to impact, I want to change, do better. and I hope to have that chance to do that through this election. I was on active duty in the Air Force for many years. I went to the United States Air Force Academy, which is in Colorado Springs. It's very similar to a West Point for the Army or the Naval Academy in Annapolis, but it's the Air Force version. And then after that, I served as a military intelligence officer on active duty for several years, working with the military drones and that program. And then did that as a reservist while going to the Howard University School of Law. Graduated and have been a practicing attorney for about 14 years now, doing all kinds of things from really complex, huge litigation matters that gain national, international attention, made partner there, did consumer finance work where I obtained settlements for millions of dollars to benefit consumers. And now I work with a trade association helping to bridge the gap, if you will, in understanding between the consumers and what they need and the financial services industry. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation.
So if we had to, I guess you would say, because District 8 needs as much as help as possible, if we had to quantify, what would be the top 3 things that you would love to see?
Yeah, you know, there's so much work to be done, you're right. And I think in terms, particularly for this position and for the term of this position, because it is a vacancy election, so it's this term ends in December, but it's an election year, right? So we know come June or July, everyone's going to be focused on their elections and not so much focused on their jobs. And so for me, for my purposes, I certainly want to focus on keeping District 8 money in District 8. And what I mean by that is a few things. One, we have a lack of retail resources here in the district. There are certain areas where there's no grocery stores, or maybe there's one grocery store and it's not sufficient in terms of the quality and the quantity and the diversity of foods available. We have existing commercial spaces that are blighted in terms of they're half empty. You know, you pass storefronts and half of the spaces are vacant. The parking lots are full of potholes. There's no lighting in the parking lot, so you don't feel safe to shop there. So we've got to address those problems in terms of raising the quality of the existing retail so that we can attract new retail in a thoughtful way. And what do I mean by that? So development for development's sake is not beneficial to District 8. So when we bring in new business, we want to make sure that we're thoughtful of the impact that has in terms of the traffic flow, for example, and that we plan for that. The impact that it has environmentally, so that we're looking at making sure that we're not putting in a space that's a swamp or putting in a space that's eroding and is going to create other issues for either the surrounding communities or for the county as a whole, you know, and footing that bill. And so we want to bring in new development, we want to attract new business, and we want to maintain and improve the level of existing business. And so a few of the things that I have in mind are grant programs that incentivize existing commercial spaces to enhance both the safety features, so increasing security patrols or increasing the lighting, working with the cops, particularly through the community policing programs, and developing the relationships there so that you don't feel like you're taking your life in your own hands if you go shopping, you know, I don't want to name any particular businesses, but, you know, at a certain time of evening. And then also looking at potentially tax consequences for those businesses those large commercial spaces that get our money but are not investing in keeping up the property. And so I would call it something similar to a blight tax. So if you've got this large commercial space and all the lights are out and the parking lot is like driving through a jungle, then you pay an added tax for keeping this decrepit, unattractive state. And so things like that, to motivate people, either with positive motivation or through penalties, to maintain their facilities. And I think in terms of development, we've seen it in the county. We see it in Largo. That blue line corridor is being developed like no one's business. We've seen it at National Harbor. But we want to make sure these are spaces that are welcoming and friendly to us as existing District 8 residents, to shop there, enjoy those spaces. So that's one thing. Also, safe roadways. Again, a multispectral problem. But we've got the 210s, we've got part of Branch Avenue coming through District 8, but we've also got the Suitland Parkways, the roads that are notorious for being high in fatalities, extremely high in speeding, DUI driving, distracted driving. And I want to look at legislation that identifies, based on specific factors, these types of roadways that are, I won't say renowned, infamous for being dangerous for our citizens. And I was told in a different form, well, some of those roads are state roads. Well, it doesn't matter. The county is part of the state. And so we should be able to work with people in different jurisdictions, people at different levels of government, to do what's right for our citizens here. And so looking to identify those particular roadways based on a number of factors, and then direct additional targeted resources to address these problems, so that we don't have to hear on the news every time there's a fatality like there was on Saturday on 210 about it being the most dangerous road in America. That's an embarrassment to our county. And then the third thing is looking at how we're spending money in our schools. Because the interesting thing is, and from the county council perspective, we don't have a lot of control over the schools. The school board does a lot of that work. But we do have some influence in terms of the budget and in terms of our ability to call hearings to understand better what is going on in our schools. And so the concern that I have, and I'm sure many of you have, is that we pay a lot of taxes in this county, and we have a lot of money in this county, and we put a lot of money into our schools, but our schools are notorious for underperformance and for being behind schools in nearby neighboring jurisdictions. Why is that? Is it because we're not putting enough money in, or is it because we're misdirecting the money that we're putting in? And so it's really about what I'd call a root cause analysis. What are the root causes of our problems in our schools? And then how do we direct our resources, our attention to fix those? Because I think there's a natural inclination to say our schools need more money. Maybe that's true, but have we looked at the problem to see if it's the amount of money, or it's because there's too much money here and there's not enough money there? And so those are the three things that I want to focus on the most: the retail, the roads, and the schools.
Wow, those are strong, pivotal issues. District 8 has been nicknamed Ward 9, the Ward 9 of DC. Ward 8, and it's that has always been the notion, the narrative around District 8. Two of the things that you just mentioned are very important. The visibility for our lighting in businesses, our sidewalks, places where there are the transit points for the county bus and as well as the metro bus. I've had several individuals reach out to me, and have addressed that these are issues. And you touched on something about public safety, and you're probably about the only person that I've actually heard bring this up. Uh, these guns are going off in District 8. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to be negative or anything, but this is a reality. This is a reality. This is the guns are going off. We saw in the midst of what's happening and what's transpired in the midst of the pandemic, we unfortunately a lot of funding from constituents that applied for rental assistance. A lot of those individuals are on the waiting list forever. So we saw a high uptake in evictions. And so, y'all know how I always say, we talk about crime, but we know the real issue of crime is the fact of poverty contributes to crime. That's the reality. That's not make believe. That's just the reality. And so people sometimes go in survival mode, and they, unfortunately, that just happens to be the issue. I do know several concerns. I have had several concerns. Other people have reached out to me about several concerns about the disposition of the community policing. They feel that there's a disconnect between the public safety and then the ones that's in charge of doing it. So it seems like now there's a combination and a mixture of individuals that are doing the policing. It's a couple developments in District 8 have the patrolling from the sheriff department. That's a little bit different than we have the county police doing the patrolling, but District 8 somehow, some way, we don't want to talk about the real issues at hand, because these issues at hand, I guess we don't want that narrative. Individuals don't want that narrative. Oh, we're bad. I always say you got to get real with it to deal with it, and we can't just put a band-aid and just say, oh.
Yeah. Well, and you've raised several points there. One, in terms of housing insecurity, that has been a problem long before the pandemic in this county as a whole, and particular to certain neighborhoods. District 8, it's interesting because sometimes people think of District 8 as a uniform community, if you will, and everyone has the same needs and everyone has the same concerns, but the neighborhoods in District 8 are very different. And sometimes there are neighborhoods in this district, in any district, that get more attention, more resources, more responses to their problems than others. The housing insecurity issue does not necessarily affect those neighborhoods that are getting the attention of politicians currently in office. So that's one thing. But I know from my personal experience when I lived in the Palmer Park area, the difficulty people had in getting in the voucher program, for example. They had been waiting for a very long time to get rental assistance in that way. And the pandemic has just exacerbated that on different levels, because of job loss, because of just the emotional and mental stress of being in a situation where there was the health issues, there was the social injustice issues that were going on at that time and continue to go on, and it's all layered on top of concerns that people already had about um, feeding their kids. You know, there are a lot of kids in this district throughout the county that eat at school because that's where food is available to them.
Yeah.
And so I think, and the point that you've raised also about the community policing, unfortunately, it's been my experience, personal experience, and I can't say what this looks like in terms of the various neighborhoods that I've just talked about, but it is very dependent on who your community officer is and who is performing that community policing function in your area as to how well that goes. And so, for example, in my old neighborhood, we had a great officer, Corporal Tony Ayers, and I hope he's still out there policing somewhere. He had moved on, and I think ran for sheriff, maybe in Chevrolet a few years later. But he was great. He was very involved. He was very committed to helping us address things on the lowest level, you know, without police, because quite frankly, we don't want to see the police after there's already been a crime committed, someone hurt, someone's home invaded. We want the police to work with us cooperatively before that happens and help us identify, for example, there are people that I have talked to through the course of this campaign who have concerns that don't have to escalate. If they knew who the right person is to talk to or had the police to help them negotiate, navigate the situation and say, well, how about you do this and how about y'all do that? And then we all move in our separate directions. And so I think and I know that there's been added funding put in this fiscal year, this existing fiscal year, into training for those community policing programs. We've got to see how that training has worked in order to produce consistent results across neighborhoods, regardless of which individual officer you get, to enhance that relationship before it becomes confrontational, before it results in people locked up. On the point of crime in our community, whether we want to talk about it or not, people outside of Prince George's County talk about it all the time, to where the media outlets, when you go on any social media source, if they say, oh, there's a murder in PG County, you notice they always say, almost always say, in PG County, whereas if the murder happens in Fairfax County, it may say the street name or it may say the particular community. But there's often this association of PG County and violence, to where now people equate PG County as being this highly violent place because they don't distinguish, just like everywhere else. There are some crimes here, there are some crimes here, there are some crimes over here. That's not to say we don't have a crime problem, but we also have a perception of crime problem. And so I think we as, and when I say we, I mean our elected officials, can do a better job of messaging the good of what happens in our county. But another issue in terms of this perception of PG being, you know, a dangerous place and where crime happens, is that criminals buy into that, right? If Prince George's County is known as the place where you can go and carjack someone, like, oh, don't go to Virginia because if you cross the Wilson Bridge, they're gonna throw the book at you, like you won't see the light of day. They're gonna come over here where they feel that their chances are greater to escape, or that they'll get slapped on the wrist or what have you. And in talking to some local police officers about some of the problems they're seeing, and I said, look, people are concerned because we've got this crime spree going on. You know, a lot of people are complaining about their cars being stolen from their driveways, being carjacked in their neighborhoods, and it seems like nothing is happening. And one of the things that they had indicated to me, these two officers from different districts in this county, was that there were so many crimes that they were building the case for that weren't being charged by the state's attorney's office. And so, again, it's this thing where if you know you can commit certain crimes and you know those crimes aren't going to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, why not? Why not go ahead and do whatever and do this? And so we've got to look at being more rigorous in charging those people who are committing those crimes so that that narrative flips and it's like, man, if you do that in PG, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. And I love what you said about creating preventative measures before they escalate or get to something bigger. I feel as if that the powers that be, the officials, when you look at the grander scale of everything, like our evictions and whatnot, there was a moment to where if individuals, if those that was in charge could have petitioned and kind of expedited the process for people to capture the funding from the funding from the that was released from the Biden
The CARES Act.
the CARES Act, that we possibly could saw a different turnout as it related to evictions. Unfortunately, Uncut Live Productions, we happen to be boots on the ground in the community. Individuals reached out to us and said, hey, this is what it is. It was just so many different dispositions where individuals were either, one, they were waiting for unemployment to file, to come through, or individuals may have been put into other situations where they may have been waiting, constituents was waiting for the Social Security Administration to open up because some individuals was getting government benefits, and when the phases was done away with and stuff started opening back up, a lot of constituents had issues with turning in their paperwork to get their up. So like if people was receiving disability and let's just happen to say their date came up where they were waiting for the administration, the Social Security Administration, to process their case. They've gotten all their medical paperwork, they've gotten everything that they were supposed to do, but the Social Security Administration wasn't open. So that was a huge issue that I know of, particular within the constituents. So like individuals was like, hey, I'm waiting for when they open back up. Shout out to the beloved Anthony Brown, who had tried to assist and coordinate individuals to help individuals with that. That was a huge issue that a lot of the individuals wasn't paying attention to, because even when the stimulus program came out, a lot of individuals who were like on disability, a lot of individuals didn't get the stimulus. So those are just some of the different barriers, where individuals like, hey, it's not that I lost my job due to COVID, it's just that I'm waiting for my paperwork to be processed at Social Security. Yeah. So them accessing the ability for them to be able to access those fundings, it wasn't falling in their favor. So I just think that we need officials to be a little bit more involved with the grassroots organizations or the community advocates to create a different, plateau, so that way that what we're seeing it don't have to escalate to something, bigger. We've got a lot of individuals where in District 8, unfortunately, getting trespass charges because either they're waiting at a bus stop, they can't utilize, they don't have nowhere to go. The list, they got to get the 800 number for the shelter hotline, and they got to keep calling the line every day to figure out, hey, yes, I'm still interested. So these are just some of the different things that, as you were speaking, hit right on head, hit right on target. So for those that are watching, Prince George's County, listen, we have options. You don't have to settle. You don't have to just say, oh, no, you have options. You have an option. You can write Miss Ebony Johnson in as an independent. You've heard it here. Uncut Live is told you. We're out in the field. We're out in the community. We're galvanizing. So for those that have reached out and said, hey, they've kind of just thrown a lost cause, because a lot of people feel like that there's nobody that understands what's going on, what's happening in District 8. They feel like, okay, screw it. This is just what it is. Y'all have an option. Write Miss Ebony Johnson in. Listen. You got to get involved. There is hope on the other side. You don't have to just count out.
And can I offer an analogy? So I was thinking about it this weekend, and he's absolutely right. So many of you, if you haven't already received your ballot, if you're registered to vote in District 8 and you haven't already received your ballot, you should be receiving it by tomorrow. If not, you should reach out to the Board of Elections, because they were supposed to go out in the mail under state law last Tuesday. But when you get that ballot and you open it up, you're going to see one name listed. And it is the tendency of people to see that one name and think, oh, why should I even bother? I'm not going to participate. There's no hope. It's the same old saying. That's not true. There are two people running, me and the other person whose name is on the ballot. Just because my name is not on the ballot, that doesn't mean that I'm a lesser candidate. It's just a different route that I'm taking that has been approved, certified by the county. If you go to the Board of Elections website, you would see my name listed there as the county general election candidates, both myself and my opponent. So there's a block just for me, and it says write in, and you just fill in that bubble and write in my name, Ebony Johnson. It's with a Y, but even if you forget and you misspell it, it doesn't matter, as long as it's clear your intent is to vote for me. If you put E. Johnson, if you put Johnson, that will get you there. But as I was watching I don't know if you're a football fan, but as I was watching the playoffs this weekend, I thought about it, because I was thinking, how do I message to people who don't know who I am, have never met me, are maybe familiar with Mr. Burrows, who has served on the school board for a number of years. And I come in as this black box, if you will, like, who is she? What is she about? I am a very skilled attorney, and I have practiced law on all different levels for many years, over a decade. And this is a legislative position, and it's very important to understand what that means. So county council, the main thing they do, county council sits with a few different hats. It sits as district council, so that is concerning zoning decisions, whether certain businesses are able to open in certain spaces. That's district council. They also sit as the Board of Health. And so a lot of decisions about nutrition and COVID spending and things like that, that's Board of Health. And so, but all of those things have in common a legislative component. And when I say legislative, I mean writing laws, fixing laws. Many of the problems in this county can be fixed with a better law. For example, the concern that people have about the battery storage facility that's proposed on Livingston Road by Pepco. There's a concern because this is a new facility of its kind for Pepco. It's proposed to go in a location that's very close to houses, and there are challenges that come with, for example, if there was an accident that occurred at this facility with putting out a fire, for example, and not creating a hazard for the nearby homes. Putting on my hat as a lawyer and thinking through the problem as a legal problem, initially I thought, okay, it can probably be addressed through zoning. Like, we have to see, we have to evaluate the issue, but does there need to be some adjustment in the law concerning zoning of this kind of facility so that it can't go so close to the houses? You see what I'm saying? Or is it that in reading through why they're putting it there, because I'm a lawyer and that's what I do, I read documents all day, every day, is it that this facility needs to happen now, or can it be delayed for a year or two to give us time to figure out a better location? But I bring that example up because, in the football reference, because in watching that amazing game, if you saw the Chiefs and the Bills and just the battle of the quarterbacks, and it ain't over, and you think it's over, it ain't over, and you think it's over again, it dawned on me that the problem that we have in this county is that we're not building the team that we want to win the game. And if you think about it in terms of fantasy football, when you pick your fantasy football team, you're looking at the stats, like who's got the best arm, who's running the best routes, who had the most completions, who made the most sacks. And you're putting people on your team who can get the job done each week, hopefully. We're not doing that in this county. Now, Mr. Burrows, I don't know him. I've heard people say, that they like him, they remember him from when he ran for school board when he was in school. But this job requires someone who runs the right routes, who knows how to run the route to get the ball and deliver the results. And I'm not saying that he's not good at some jobs. I'm just saying I am better for this job. And if we want to win as a county and we want to move forward and get things done, we have to build our political bench very much like we would build our fantasy team bench. And that is putting people in the positions that can play their role, run their route, catch the ball, and get the job done. And so that's my plug for writing my name down. Like I said, just filling in that little bubble, writing my name down puts me on the bench for a winning team. And that's what I'd ask you to do.
So, Prince George's County constituents, guess what? Get the writing in. Get involved. All hope is not gone. You have another choice. You have another option. You heard it here first. Yours truly, Mr. Uncut. Y'all stay locked and loaded and stay plugged in. We coming at you. Loud and clear. Peace.